back to the Chattable podcast, where we learn real English in real life and have fun and be proud.
It is so great to be here with you today.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you back. And today we have a very specific mission for you listening at home. Because if you ever feel completely overwhelmed by dense news jargon, you are absolutely not alone.
Oh, totally. I mean, reading the morning headlines can sometimes feel like you're trying to decipher a foreign language.
Right. It really can. But in this episode, we're going to turn your daily news feed into a masterclass in dynamic English vocabulary.
I love that.
Yeah, we're going to explore the hidden history, the psychological framing, and, the very precise usage of three vivid phrases that journalists constantly rely on.
The ones that really shape your perception of the world.
Exactly. And those three phrases are spark, touch off, and suave.
It's just so great to be looking at this with you today.
Yeah.
Because what we have to realize is that these aren't just filler words.
No, not at all.
They aren't just lazy synonyms for start or a lot. They are incredibly precise, highly engineered linguistic tools. And understanding the deep history behind them won't just improve your vocabulary. It's actually going to unlock a completely new layer of subtext in the news you read every single day.
You'll start to see exactly how editors are subtly telling you what to think about an event.
Before you've even read the first paragraph.
Exactly. Okay, so let's unpack this. We're going to start with a word that sounds incredibly simple, but it carries a massive amount of weight in modern journalism.
Right.
And our first word is spark.
Okay.
Now, assuming we all know the basic physics of what a spark actually is.
Like a tiny glowing ember from a campfire.
Yeah, exactly. Or like a flash from flint striking steel. What we really need to look at is how that literal phenomenon was co-opted by the news media.
And that is exactly where the linguistics get so fascinating. Because if we look at the cognitive linguistics of the word spark, we have to ask, why does the human brain love fire metaphors so much?
Good question.
Right. Well, fire is essentially our oldest human technology.
Yeah.
It's hardwired into our neurology as the ultimate catalyst.
Wow. Yeah.
And think about a physical spark. It is incredibly tiny. It only lasts a fraction of a second.
Rarely even there.
Right. But its defining characteristic is its potential for disproportionate impact. If that microscopic fleck of heat lands on a bed of dry pine needles,
it instantly creates a massive roaring forest fire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The word inherently carries this idea of extreme contrast in scale, a microscopic cause creating a macroscopic effect.
And that contrast in scale is exactly why editors love it. I was actually, I was looking into the history of early journalism for this episode.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, specifically around the advent of the telegraph in the 19th century.
Right.
When reporters started having to wire their stories across the country, they were charged a word, and sometimes even by the letter.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it was by the letter.
Yeah, so long academic phrases like initiated a cascade of events or precipitated a widespread reaction.
They were literally too expensive to transmit.
Exactly. Spark is 5 letters, it's punchy, it's cheap to send, and it instantly paints a dramatic picture in the reader's mind.
That makes so much sense.
And it just survived the telegraph era and became a staple of the Associated Press style book.
That telegraph connection is a brilliant point. And if we connect this to the bigger picture of modern corpus linguistics,
which is the study of how frequently words are used in large bodies of text over time.
Exactly, yes.
Oh.
We see a massive spike in the use of sparked throughout the 20th and 21st centuries. It became the absolute go-to verb for describing the genesis of things that are difficult to quantify.
Right.
You rarely see a headline say, the new policies sparked the construction of 3 buildings.
Because that's a slow, planned, physical process.
Precisely. But you will constantly see it used for sudden, explosive, uncontrollable human phenomena.
Like nationwide protests.
Yes, or viral trends, sudden debates, or out-of-the-blue financial shifts.
So what does this all mean for you when you're reading the news or trying to use it in your own writing?
Well, you want to use spark when you're pinpointing the exact moment. The
precise, unexpected trigger.
Right, that leads to a sudden and explosive outcome. It draws the audience's eye right to the very beginning of the timeline.
Specifically highlighting how disproportionate the reaction was to the initial event.
Precisely. It emphasizes the unpredictability of the environment. The dry leaves, in our metaphor, weren't necessarily doing anything wrong.
They were just sitting there.
They were just sitting there. But the environment was primed for a reaction.
Let's look at a concrete example from the sources we gathered for this episode. First, let's look at a financial news context.
Okay.
A very common headline structure you'll see looks like this. Quote, "The Middle East conflict sparked a stock market sell-off around the world."
Now, this raises a really important question about how modern financial markets actually operate. Well, today, the global economy is incredibly reactive.
Sure.
In fact, a huge percentage of daily market trading isn't done by humans at all.
Oh, right. It's done by algorithmic trading bots.
Exactly. And these bots use natural language processing to read news headlines in milliseconds.
Right.
And they are specifically programmed to scan for high volatility verbs.
Like sparked.
Like sparked.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Are you saying the algorithmic bots are literally the dry leads in the metaphor?
Exactly. The algorithms are sitting there, highly sensitive, waiting for a data input.
Wow.
So an event happens in the Middle East. A journalist at Bloomberg or Reuters writes the headline using the word sparked. The trading bot reads that word, registers the implication of sudden, massive volatility, and instantly triggers billions of dollars in automated sell-offs.
That is wild.
It is. The word sparked isn't just describing the reality of the market. In a very modern, terrifying way, the word itself actually facilitates the global reaction catching fire.
It tells you that the sell-off was immediate, massive, and directly triggered by that one specific, localized conflict.
Right.
That is mind-blowing when you think about the real-world mechanics of vocabulary.
It really is.
Now, let's look at how it's used in the context of culture and society, because the mechanics of the word change slightly when we deal with human emotion.
Okay, let's hear it.
Another example from our sources is this headline. Quote, "Colin Kaepernick taking a knee during the national anthem sparked a nationwide debate about racial injustice in the United States."
Okay, so if we strip away the politics here.
Right, we're not taking a stance on the politics themselves.
Exactly. We are looking at this purely from a linguistic and editorial perspective.
Agreed.
The journalist chose this word to illustrate a very specific juxtaposition. Think about what the physical action happening here actually is. A man is kneeling.
Right.
It's a completely silent, solitary, stationary action. It takes up very little physical space and generates 0 decibels of noise.
But the reaction was the exact opposite of that.
Exactly. The reaction was a massive, deafening, highly complex and chaotic conversation that spanned across an entire country of over 300 million people.
Wow, yeah.
The word sparked is the linguistic bridge between that silent, solitary action and the roaring societal fire that followed.
Because if the journalist had written, "Colin Kaepernick taking a knee caused a nationwide debate," it feels too
mechanical.
Yeah, it feels like an equation. A plus B equals C.
Right. But sparked captures the disparity, the volatility, and the sheer uncontrollable nature of the public discourse that immediately followed.
It paints such a vivid picture. A
Oh,
single
yeah.
moment, a sudden flash, and then an unstoppable fire of discourse.
It's incredibly evocative.
It really is.
Yeah.
But that actually brings us to our second phrase,
Okay.
which sounds like it should mean the exact same thing, starting a fire. But it carries a subtly different, much darker weight. The phrase is touch off.
Oh, I am so glad we are diving into touch off because it is a brilliant case study in how the origins of a phrase dictate its emotional tone centuries later.
Definitely.
Yes, it also deals with starting a fire or an explosion.
Yeah.
But the history behind it comes straight out of early military warfare.
Right. To really understand the gravity of this phrase, we have to rewind the clock a few hundred years and step onto a 16th or 17th century battlefield.
Paint the picture for us.
We're talking about the era of early cannons and the very first muskets, specifically the matchlock musket.
Okay, imagine being a soldier in that era, long before the invention of modern self-contained bullets.
Because today, you pull a trigger, a mechanical firing pin strikes a primer inside a closed brass casing, and the weapon fires instantly.
Right, it's entirely self-contained. But back then, to fire a weapon, soldiers had to physically orchestrate the explosion by hand.
In the open air.
In the open air, while under fire.
Terrifying.
Very. These old cannons and matchlock firearms had a tiny hole drilled directly into the back of the metal barrel.
And that hole was literally called the touch hole.
Yes. So the process was incredibly manual.
They had to pour raw gunpowder down the barrel, pack in the cannonball or the lead musket ball,
And then pour a little bit of extra finer gunpowder into a small pan right next to that touch hole.
and then came the truly terrifying part of early warfare. The soldier was holding a burning match.
But not a modern friction match, right?
No, not at all. It was a slow-burning cord soaked in potassium nitrate. literally called a slow match.
It was essentially a lit fuse that burned continuously.
Exactly. And to detonate the weapon, they had to physically touch that smoldering, burning element directly to the gunpowder waiting in the pan.
Wow.
The fire would flash through the touch hole, reach the main charge of gunpowder inside the barrel, and violently detonate the weapon.
They had to touch off the powder to make the weapon fire.
Yes. So historically and literally, to touch off meant to intentionally trigger a deadly, violent explosion.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for your everyday vocabulary. And this is the crucial distinction you need to look out for when reading the news. Because a spark, like we talked about, can happen anywhere.
Right. A spark can jump out of a cozy fireplace, hit the brick hearth, and just fizzle out harmlessly.
The environment isn't necessarily dangerous.
But touch off.
Touch off implies a pre-existing condition of extreme, highly concentrated danger.
Okay, I see.
If we go back to the metaphor, you aren't just sitting around a campfire in the woods anymore.
Where are you?
You are walking into a confined room deep in the hull of a warship that is absolutely packed to the ceiling with wooden barrels of gunpowder.
Oh, wow. The tension is already there.
The danger is already present. The environment is incredibly volatile and hostile.
So when that one small action happens, it doesn't just start a fire.
No, it finally causes the inevitable violent detonation that everyone in the room was sweating over and dreading.
But do you think modern journalists actually know that history when they type it on a deadline? Or has it just become a lazy synonym for started?
That is a fantastic question. Consciously, most journalists probably aren't thinking about 17th century matchlock muskets when they write a headline.
Right, they're just trying to get the story out.
Exactly. But subconsciously, as native English speakers, they absolutely feel the weight of the phrase.
It's baked into the language.
It is baked into the editorial DNA of the language. We absorb the tone of these phrases through years of reading.
That makes sense.
And because of that heavy, violent history, editors almost exclusively reserve touch-off for negative, intense, or highly volatile events.
You would never, ever read a headline that says, a charitable donation touched off a feeling of joy in the community.
Never. It clashes horribly with the subconscious tone.
But you will constantly hear journalists write about an event touching off a riot.
Or touching off a diplomatic crisis, touching off a financial panic, or touching off a civil war.
It's a phrase of detonation, not illumination.
Perfectly said.
Let's look at how the news uses this in practice and how it completely changes who or what gets the blame for an event.
Okay, let's hear the example.
Here's one from our economic sources. Quote, oil price spikes touched off fears about an economic slowdown and worsening inflations.
Notice the hidden context the journalist is providing you here.
Right. If they had written oil price spikes sparked fears, they'd be implying that the oil prices were the sole isolated cause of the fear.
Yes, but by using touched off, they are subtly telling you about the macroeconomic environment before the spike even happened.
The economy was already anxious.
Supply chains were already strained. People were already deeply worried about inflation.
The room was already completely full of gunpowder.
The oil price spike was just the lit match touching the powder.
It detonated the fears that were already lying in wait.
Exactly. As a reader, when you see touched off, you should immediately ask yourself, what was the pre-existing tension?
What was the gunpowder?
Exactly.
Let's try one more example, this time from the business and tech world.
Great.
We have a headline from a few years ago. Quote, Elon Musk's sudden tweet about taking Tesla private touched off a massive investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC.
Okay, so if we connect this to the bigger picture of financial regulation, this word choice is masterful.
How so?
By using touched off instead of sparked, the writer is subtly suggesting that the SEC regulators were already watching Musk and Tesla incredibly carefully.
So the regulatory environment surrounding the company was already highly charged and sensitive.
Yes. The SEC is the gunpowder. That single, sudden, impulsive tweet was the match to the touch hole.
That immediately detonated a massive, complex federal investigation.
It conveys a sense of inevitability. It implies that if it wasn't this tweet, it was going to be something else eventually.
Because the tension was already at a breaking point.
Exactly.
It completely changes the flavor of the headline once you know the history. You can almost smell the sulfur.
You really can.
And it makes you realize how much editorial power is packed into two little words.
It's immense.
Okay, so we've spent a lot of time talking about how things begin, how a tiny microscopic event initiates a massive reaction.
Right.
Now, I want to pivot the episode to our third phrase in the outline.
This is a good one.
We are moving away from the beginning of an event, and we are going to look at a word that perfectly describes the massive scale of the impact.
Okay.
The word is swath, or, depending on where you're reading it, sometimes it's spelled with an E at the end and pronounced swath.
This is hands down one of my absolute favorite descriptive words in the English language.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. While our first two phrases were deeply rooted in fire, explosions, and warfare, swath takes us far away from the battlefield.
And straight into agricultural history.
Exactly.
Yes. To really grasp why this word feels so sweeping and dramatic when you read it in a headline, we have to travel back hundreds of years.
Long before the industrialization of farming.
Way before John Deere tractors and massive diesel combine harvesters existed.
Imagine a peasant farmer standing at the edge of a massive, endless field of tall grass or golden wheat.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
To harvest that field, farmers didn't have machines. They used a manual hand tool called a scythe.
Like the traditional image of the Grim Reaper.
Yes, exactly. The Grim Reaper is holding a scythe. It's a long wooden pole with a very distinct, large, curved, razor-sharp blade attached at the end at a right angle.
Right.
The farmer would hold the wooden handles with both hands, step forward, and swing the blade in a wide, rhythmic arcing motion across their body, close to the ground.
It's a very specific, highly physical, exhausting movement.
It is. And etymologically, the word goes all the way back to the Old English word swath.
Which originally meant a track or a footprint, right?
Yeah, a trace left behind by someone passing through. But as agriculture developed, it became specifically attached to the scythe.
So a swath became the literal physical result of that swinging movement.
Yes, a swath was specifically the wide, sweeping strip of grass or wheat that fell to the ground with one single continuous swing of the scythe's blade.
If you stand back and visualize it, it's a broad, uninterrupted path of sheer impact cut right through the landscape.
So how did that ancient farmer's term bypass all the technological revolutions and become a staple of modern 21st century news journalism?
Well, over the centuries, the word evolved in English to describe any broad, sweeping area, group, or section of something.
Right.
And for you, as a listener or a writer, using the word swath is a deliberate choice in empathy manipulation and cognitive visualization.
Wow, empathy manipulation. I like that.
It sounds vastly more descriptive, dramatic, and visual than simply giving the reader a cold statistic or just saying, a lot of.
And that is the crux of why journalists use it. It's the difference between merely reporting the facts and painting a visceral, emotional picture for the reader.
Give us an example of how that framing works.
Okay, if a journalist writes, the new tax law will affect a lot of middle-class families.
Your brain processes that as a vague, abstract concept.
Right. But if they write, the new tax law will affect a massive swath of middle-class families.
They are forcing your brain to visualize scale.
Yes. You use swath when you really want to emphasize the sheer, unbroken, continuous scale of an impact.
You want your listener to subconsciously visualize that giant scythe sweeping across a map or a demographic population.
Exactly.
And because of this highly visual nature, it's heavily favored in 3 specific domains of journalism.
Weather reporting, politics, and economics.
Right. In weather, a storm might destroy a swath of land. In politics, a candidate might appeal to a massive swath of voters.
And in economics, a new policy or a crash might impact a vast swath of businesses.
Let's bring in our real-world examples to hear it in context. First, an economic news headline from a market downturn. Quote, the stock declines cut across a swath of industries, including big tech, industrials, and materials.
Notice the brilliant phrasal verb the editor paired it with there.
Cut across.
Cut across. The journalist is literally invoking the ghost of that ancient farmer's scythe.
They're blending the metaphorical and the physical.
Yes. It wasn't just a few random isolated companies losing value in different sectors.
The economic decline acted like a giant, indiscriminate blade.
Sweeping cleanly across a massive, diverse section of the entire global economy, bringing down massive tech conglomerates and heavy industrial manufacturers alike in one wide, devastating arc.
It really highlights the indiscriminate nature of the event.
Right.
Because a scythe doesn't care if it's cutting a weed or a valuable stalk of wheat.
It cuts everything in its path.
And that indiscriminate nature makes suave incredibly effective for conveying the devastation of natural disasters.
Absolutely.
Let's look at this weather and geography example from our sources. Quote, Hurricane Katrina destroyed a massive swath of neighborhoods across New Orleans and the Gulf Coast.
This is where the word reaches its absolute peak emotional impact.
Yeah.
If the writer had just looked at the data and said Katrina destroyed many neighborhoods, or even if they had given the exact number...
Like Katrina destroyed 134 neighborhoods.
Right. It paradoxically wouldn't carry the same emotional weight.
Because a number is just a data point.
Exactly. But swath forces you to visualize the hurricane as an unstoppable physical force.
A massive, sweeping blade of wind and water.
That indiscriminately leveled a continuous, broad path of destruction right across the map.
If you look at satellite imagery of a hurricane's aftermath, or the path of a massive EF5 tornado,
it literally looks like a giant scythe took a swath out of the earth.
the word emphasizes the unbroken, terrifying scale of the event.
It's amazing how much visual and emotional power is packed into one little single-syllable word.
It really is. We started this episode talking about feeling overwhelmed by the news.
Yeah.
And I think what we've discovered is that the overwhelm often comes from not realizing the tools the writers are using on us.
Absolutely, because when you don't know the history of these words, you are just passively absorbing information.
You're letting the journalist dictate the tone without you even realizing it.
Right.
Okay, let's take a moment to look at the incredible journey we've been on in this episode.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. We started with the tiny, microscopic, flying embers of a spark, jumping from the campfire to ignite a sudden, wildly disproportionate reaction.
And we saw how algorithmic trading bots literally turn that metaphor into billions of dollars.
Yeah. Then we moved to the tense, high-stakes military history of a touch hole in a 17th century matchlock musket.
Where one action doesn't just start a fire, but touches off an inevitable explosion in a room completely full of pre-existing tension and gunpowder.
And finally, we swung the long, curved blade of the ancient farmer's scythe, cutting a massive, continuous swath of indiscriminate impact across the economic landscape and the literal map.
And this brings us right back to our ultimate goal for you today in this podcast. Understanding the deep, sometimes violent, sometimes agricultural history behind these three phrases doesn't just give you a few cool etymology facts to share at a dinner party.
Though it does do that.
It definitely does.
Yeah.
But it fundamentally upgrades your vocabulary.
Yes.
And far more importantly, it unlocks a deeper understanding of the subtext in the news you read every single day.
You aren't just reading flat text on a screen anymore.
You are seeing the hidden pictures, the subtle blame shifting, and the emotional framing the journalists are painting for you.
It makes you a more active, critical, and engaged consumer of information.
Exactly.
And I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over.
Right.
The next time you are scrolling through your morning news feed on your phone, and you see a headline about a major new event,
A protest, a market crash, a political scandal.
I want you to stop and pay very close attention to the verb the editor chose.
Good advice.
Did the journalist choose to write that the event sparked a reaction? Or did they deliberately say it touched off a reaction?
Ask yourself what that subtle, single-word choice reveals about how the writer viewed the underlying tension of that society or that market before the event even happened.
Right. Were we just innocent dry leaves waiting for a surprise ember to fall from the sky?
Or were we already sitting in a dark room, completely full of gunpowder, just waiting for the match?
Think about it. Thanks for joining us on this episode, and we'll catch you on the next one.